5 days and 5 nights in the forest on the shores of Loch Bradan in Scotland, doing the Survival School Applied Wilderness Skills course. What's not to love? My survival knowledge for Africa is pretty good. Europe is a completely different environment with different challenges. I wanted to improve my survival skills for Northern Hemisphere environments, so here I am in Scotland. We arrived in the forest on a Sunday evening in May. After a safety briefing, we had enough time to set up our tarp and hammock for the evening, as it was getting dark and starting to rain. Once my tarp was set up, I set up my hammock, stowing my gear, and settled in for the night. In the morning, my main priority was to get a fire going. Fire was going to be our best friend over the next few days for boiling drinking water, cooking our food, and providing well-needed cheer. Maintaining a fire was critical, as we were not allowed to use water filters or purification tablets. A rolling boil was the name of the game. The fire starting technique that I use is quite simple. I took the tinder card that we were given from the survival school and shaved pieces of fat wood. I then roughed up the tinder card with the blade of my knife to make it fibrous and lit the fibers on the card using my ferro rod. Once the tinder card was burning, I placed that in the fireplace and added the fat wood shavings on top as a flame extender. I then added twigs and gradually thicker wood until the fire was burning. When my fire was going, I started to build a fire teepee shelter, lashing poles together using coniferous root for cordage. This became a multi-day project. I stowed my backpack in a cargo hammock underneath my main hammock. I did this to keep my backpack off the ground to prevent it from getting wet. The forest is wet with moss covering the ground, and with the expected infamous Scottish weather, I didn't want to take the chance of hanging my backpack from a tree like I would normally do. So here's a fun little feature that I built into the A-frame. I've made a cord, paracord, so I can raise the pot by turning this stick, or I can lower the pot. And the way that I did that was to make a little toggle. So there's a toggle in the end of the paracord. Paracord goes up to the stick, and then when you turn the stick, it winds up the paracord, which then in turn raises the pot. And when you turn the stick the other way, it unwinds the paracord and lowers the pot. And that's how I can control what height the pot is when I'm cooking it. After setting up my cooking pot system, I heated up some food and sat down to take a break on a makeshift chair made from pine poles from the woods. Finished eating, I got back to tending the fire. I would realize really quickly that most of my time would be spent making and tending fire. It's a lot harder than you think to make fire in wet coniferous woods. Coniferous wood burns well when it's dry, but not when it's wet, and takes a lot of processing to get it to the point where you can burn it. Once the fire was burning properly, I placed the water to boil for drinking and hung the cooking pot making pot bread, or potbrood, as it's known in southern Africa. When cooked, I placed the pot in a puddle of water close by to cool off, causing the pot bread to contract so that it'd be easier to remove from the pot. Once cool, I used my knife to loosen it up around the edges and removed it to heat. So the whole sequence of breakfast was planned around cleaning, actually, weirdly enough. So I first cooked the bacon in the pot and then used the bacon fat to make the pot bread. And that's what's left after making the pot bread. So the pot bread obviously catches on the bottom. And now I need to get that out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to boil water in here to clean the pot, but at the same time also to boil an egg. I needed to build a store of firewood, so I started processing branches, sawing them into smaller pieces and splitting them with an axe for dry firewood that would burn for a long period of time in order to sustain the fire. By cutting pieces of a dead branch and then splitting it, I was able to get dry wood on the inside, peeling off the wet bark on the outside. I then moved on to making a bench to sit on. I wanted a bench that was opposite my fire, so that I could sit under my tarp if it was raining and see the fire, so that I would know if I needed to replenish it. Every time you dig anywhere in coniferous woods, you come across roots that are great to keep and use as cordage. Cordage. Amazing. The bench was made simply using 2 large logs that I found in the woods, and then cutting smaller poles to length and putting them across, holding them in place with stakes. I tried installing a backrest for the bench as well, but the ground was too soft, and the backrest collapsed the first time I used it. Day 2 of boiling water. Water's not boiling yet, but the fire's good, so it'll be boiling soon. And I'm going to take a well-deserved rest on my new bench, right over there. In the squishiness. And eat some lunch. I must say I didn't think I'd be eating 2-minute noodles in a survival course, but there we are. It tastes good. It's carbs, it's energy. Cut some sausage into it for protein. It's tasty. So here's the water system that we're using. We were each issued with a bladder on day 1 that we filled with water from the loch. And that water runs into a millbank bag. The millbank bag filters out all the sediment and muck. And that drips into either a cup or your water bottle, whatever you're collecting water in. And then from there, it goes onto the fire. And we boil the water on the fire for 4 minutes to sterilize it, kill all the pathogens that might be in the water. Beautiful sound of boiling water. It's good to come off now. Once that cools, it'll be drinkable. So here we have the 3rd water boil of the day. Pretty much been trying to boil water all day today to make sure that I've got enough drinking water. So I'm just doing this so that tomorrow morning I've got enough drinking water to start off with. And then we did deer game prep today. So what I'm doing here is I've got a piece of venison from the game prep which I'm cooking on a hot rock. A bit of an experiment that I'm doing because I had the hot rock and I thought, let me see how that comes out. So I have already made a stew for dinner. The stew was okay. I mean, it's edible. It's not super tasty, but it's edible. But the hot rock is just an idea to try out. The stew looks a bit gross actually if you look at it. That's it over there, but it tastes okay. Might look a bit gross, but it does taste okay. So I'm hungry, I'll eat it.
Morning, y'all. I did not feel like getting out of bed this morning. Third night in a hammock and I've got used to it. It's pretty comfortable once you get used to it. But there's a lot to do, so I have to get up. First thing I need to do is go and fetch some water, make a fire, boil the water, and then make some jerky. I've got a whole bag of venison from the game prep that we did yesterday. So it's time to make jerky. Actually, I'm not going to make jerky. I'm going to make biltong.
And this is where we are going to get some water. Go to the water to get water. And I have to say that this is why we do what we do. Beats the crap out of the city. It's a perfect place to get water down here. Nice little entry point. Amazing little camp spot for summer. I think it's pretty cold though because it's being so close to the water. But still, nice little spot I think to camp. There's a lot of walking for water. Just checking on the jerky to see how it's doing. So it's certainly changed colour. I have turned it once so far, I will turn it again. And of course, water on the fire. Water, water, water on the fire. So I've spent the majority of my time while I've been here making fire because the wood is so wet. And just processing it takes time, and it all just takes time. And you need fire for water, for cooking, for everything. But this tree over here which I think is a kind of a birch tree, has been an absolute lifesaver, because I found a lot of dead wood. There's one that's fallen over here. Found a lot of dead wood. It's perfectly dry. You can hear it just snaps like snap, crackle and pop. And this has been an absolute lifesaver. So much easier than the pine. Requires a lot less processing, smaller sticks. Just treasure, absolute treasure. So here it is, all the processed wood that I've done. And I've left the lichen and the old man's beard on this one because it's so dry. Off the ground in the tree, it's so dry, and so the lichen catches fire really easily. So no need to take it off on this particular one. Gold, absolute gold. Okay, so we're on day 3. As you can see, things are getting pretty squidgy, so I've put some logs down to cross this little pathway between the hammock and my fire shelter, because things are getting pretty squishy. And as you can see, it's pretty wet on the ground, so every time I kneel down my knees get really, really wet. And I'm busy cooking dinner, so of course boiling water again, always boiling water, that never stops. And then in my pot I've got some venison with some vegetables. So the venison is from last night left over, and the vegetables are from last night left over. I actually had prepared a trout, and I've already cooked that. Forgot to video that, sorry. But that was quite tasty, but obviously not very filling, so I made this as a backup just in case. So the jerky's coming along really nicely. I've had a taste of it and it tastes pretty good. Yeah, all's well that goes well. So I made some more pot bread this morning. I cooked the bacon in the pot first and then left the bacon fat in, mixed the flour in with the bacon fat, added a little bit of water, and this is the result. Just let it cook over a relatively low heat, so I lifted the pot quite high off the fire and just left it there for quite a while. And that's the end result of the pot bread. Absolutely delicious. It's my last meal at this campsite. I'm going to be moving down to the lake tonight, the Loch, just for something different. So I'm packing up the campsite now so that I can make my way down to the Loch, spend the night there tonight. So for my last night, I spent the night next to the Loch, just in my bivvy bag. So just to give you an idea of where I slept, there's my bivvy bag. With my poncho, I just made a very basic shelter over my head and my kit to keep it dry. I folded back the poncho, which is why it looks so weird. And that's the view. Bath time. So yesterday we learned how to make a slingshot, weaving it out of, or plaiting it should I say, out of hemp cord, which was very interesting and quite challenging for having 1.5 thumbs, but a lot of fun, really loved doing it. One of my favorite projects that we've done so far. So this is the pouch that you put the stone in for the sling, plaited cord, and there's a thumb loop on the end that you put your thumb in. So you quite simply put your thumb in, grab a decent sized stone, like this over here, hold the one in your hand, just like that, and let fly. Amazing, love it. What a fun way to spend a Friday morning. I could do this for hours. And just like that, my week in the woods came to an end. I very grudgingly left the side of the loch and started to make my way back home. I have to say I can't wait to go back.